All right, we are going live right now to talk about the NL, the Major League Baseball, NL Central. I hope that there are a few people out there that care about the Reds, the Cardinals, the Brewers, the Cubs, and the Pirates. If not, this will be a long and lonely live stream right now. So let's first start off with what everybody usually talks about. Projected standings in the NL Central for 2024. And this is really the way that I see it. I don't have much background information to go along with this, but this is just perceived pickups, drops, what they did last year, and all of those kinds of things to take taken into consideration. So why don't we start from the bottom up? So the team that I think will come in fifth place in the NL Central will be none other than your Pittsburgh Pirates. And by the way, after this, I'm going to be talking about each team individually. But coming in fifth place will be the Pirates. In fourth place will be the Brewers. I think the loss of Corbin Burns was probably a big, big loss for them in the offseason, and it will jettison them to fourth place. Coming in third, in my view, in the NL Central will be the Chicago Cubs, even though they have Bellinger back, which might give them a bright spot, but I see them coming in third, even with Bellinger. Number two will be my hometown, and call me a homer, but I didn't put them first. Number two, the Cardinals. So that leaves the Reds coming in first. So let's work in reverse order here from my notes as far as who will be important in fantasy, who will be important on the team, and maybe some people to pick up for your fantasy teams as well. Now, this is again we're only talking about the NL Central here. So we have one of the most valuable players, I believe, on the team going into 2024 for the Pittsburgh Pirates, who I project in fifth place in the NL Central, will be none other than, and you probably can guess this, shortstop Oneil Cruz. Now, he is in spring training. He doesn't have a lot of stats. In spring training, he's only batting 214, but his on base percentage is actually 389, which is exceptional, or he's moving right to that 400 mark. Last year in spring training, his on base percentage was 375, and during the regular season in 2023, with only 32 at bats, he had a 302 on base percentage. So, depending upon what you want to look at for spring training numbers, he really is he's getting better. Spring training, really see him as someone who can be a big bright spot for the Pirates this spring as well. So, and the sleeper on the Pirates will be none other than the recent signing of Mitch Keller. He was 13-9 last year with a 4.21 ERA. But what was really key for Mitch Keller of the Pirates, and this is why I think he's a real fantasy sleeper, is that his strikeouts to 9 innings pitch ratio was 9.73. That's one of the barometers I always look at. How many innings pitched, how many strikeouts, and for 9 innings pitched, which we know no starting pitcher ever goes 9 innings anymore, but Mitch Keller is at 9.73 per 9 innings. And they have a pretty good one in the bullpen with David Bednar. He had a 2.00 ERA, saves 39, and his strikeout to 9 innings pitch ratio was 10.69. So not too bad. Lots of saves. He's a good fantasy pickup for reliever if you need that. But right now, I would say the biggest sleeper on the Pirates would be Mitch Keller. And then look for Oneil Cruz to have a real breakout kind of year where you might want to pick him up in the late rounds or even once the season starts. So I project it, just backtracking. I just finished the Pirates. I have Cincinnati coming in first in the NL Central. I have the Cardinals coming in second, the Cubs coming in third. I have the Brewers coming in fourth, and then the Pirates. So let's talk about the Brewers right now. I think there's most solid pickup from a fantasy standpoint, just in general. Someone who I believe is going to have another evolution of a season, if you will, because of the loss of Corbin Burns, is Freddie Peralta. Freddie had an ERA of 3.86 last season. His strikeouts to 9 inning pitch ratio was off the charts at 11.41, and he was still 12-10 for the Brewers. Now, I'm picking the Brewers to finish fourth in the NL Central, but Freddie Peralta is going to be a solid pickup for fantasy. Your sleeper pick from me for the Brewers, your sleeper pick in fantasy would be Jackson Chourio. He's a rookie. He's projected in some things that I've read to be a 20-20 kind of player. So 20 home runs, 20 stolen bases. Right now, we don't have a lot to go with on him. His average looks to be in spring training. He has a 296 average and a 345 on base percentage. So his on base percentage is really good. Now in the bullpen, like the Pirates, the Brewers have a good one in Devin Williams. He had a 1.53 ERA last year and he had 36 saves, and his strikeouts to innings pitched is the highest in the NL Central at 13.35. So the Pirates and Brewers, key players for that fifth and fourth spot. For the Pirates, I would say O'Neal Cruz has a little risk behind him because he is so young, but I think a sleeper pick for the Pirates is Mitch Keller in fantasy. I think their reliever David Bernard is a solid pickup. I think the Brewers relief pitcher Devin Williams is a solid pickup, and look for Freddie Peralta, the starting pitcher, who will probably be the ace of the Brewers. Will have a breakout year this season, so look for him to do some wonderful things. Now, let's move to what I'm predicting to be the third place team in the NL Central, and that's the Chicago Cubs. And the first player that comes to mind as far as a solid fantasy pickup, someone that the Cubs are hoping on. Now, besides Bellinger, okay, Bellinger I think is more than a solid pickup for any sort of fantasy that you select, but someone who might be under the radar or might not be as known would be Suzuki, C.A. Suzuki. Last year, he had 20 home runs. He had 74 RBIs. He batted .285, and he had a great on-base percentage at .357, and he was approaching that .360 sort of line, which is always something that's perceived to be a very great line for on-base percentages. So look for that to be one of the better players on the Cubs this year. Besides Cody Bellinger, I would say that he's a solid pickup. A sleeper for the Cubs would be the person they're projecting to be their DH, Christopher Morel. He had 26 home runs. His batting average was only .247, but he did have an on-base percentage of .313, so not bad as being the DH. So he's someone to look at for fantasy in that sleeper role. And they have a decent relief pitcher with Adbert Alzolay, and he had a 2.67 ERA, and no one's watching anyway. So saves, he had 22, and his strikeouts to 9 innings pitched was 9.42. So not the highest of the relievers in the NL Central, but a good number nonetheless. So right now we have, my projection is in the NL Central to be the Reds, then the Cardinals, then the Cubs, then the Brewers, then the Pirates. And right now, let's go through the Cardinals and talk about some of their fantasy pickups you can have this year and some of the breakout players and sleepers and their bullpen as well. So first of all, besides Arenado and all the superstars that the Cardinals have, first base, third base, all that kind of good stuff, one of their pickups in the offseason was Sonny Gray. I think he's going to be a solid pickup for them. He's a starting pitcher, a lefty. He was 8-8 last year, but his ERA was a very, very solid 2.79, and his strikeouts to 9 innings pitched was just under 9 together. It was 8.95. So look for him to have a really good season, lots of strikeouts, and hopefully if the Cardinals can get their offense together, that 8-8 could be more like, 15-9 or something like that. So look for him to be a solid fantasy pickup besides the big guys at first and third for the Cardinals. The sleeper pick right now, I would have to say, would be Jordan Walker, the right fielder. He had 16 homers last year. He batted .276, but he did have a very solid on-base percentage at .342. So look for him to do some things. He might be one of those picks you can get in the late rounds, or he might be one of those picks that you can get once the season starts and you might have an injury or someone might just not be performing up to the level that you need them to. So look for Jordan Walker there. Now, in their bullpen, they have Ryan Helsley. Now, the problem with Ryan Helsley is his numbers up front on paper don't look good from last year. He only had 14 saves, which is really the lowest amount of relief pitchers going into the NLCS. But look for him, because he's such a fastball pitcher, to get a lot of strikeouts. He's second on paper in the NL Central for relief pitchers for strikeouts per 9 innings pitched at 12.76. So look for the Cardinals to have a bounce back year. They were under 500 last year. I believe that they will go over that this year. They picked up, 3-4 guys as starting pitchers, and they should be very solid this year. Now, let's talk about the first place Reds, and that's what I'm projecting them to be. Now, Hunter Greene is my solid pick for, take away any of the other stars that you might think of, but Hunter Greene is a solid, I take that back. He's a sleeper pick for the Reds. He did have a high ERA at 4.82, but his strikeout to 9 innings pitch ratio is 12.21, which is off the charts, which means if he pitched 9 innings, which we know starting pitchers don't do anymore, but if he did, he would record 12 strikeouts per 9 innings. Now, the fantasy solid pickup from the Reds this year would be Eli De La Cruz, their shortstop. He only batted .235, but his on-base percentage was .300 last year. Now, remember, everybody, he's a shortstop. He had 13 home runs last year, and he had 35 stolen bases. So look for him to potentially be a 2020 person this year. 13's a little ways from 2020, but he very much could have that breakout kind of season this year where he puts up some really big numbers, especially depending upon how the rest of the team protects him in the lineup. Now, as I said earlier, Hunter Greene is their sleeper pick from a fantasy perspective, and they have a great guy in the bullpen with Alexis Diaz. He is a fastball slider pitcher. His ERA was very respectable at 3.07. He had 37 saves, and his strikeout to 9 innings pitch ratio was a very big 11.50. 11.50. So he averages over, if he would pitch 9 innings, he averages over 1 strikeout per inning. Now let's go over who I'm projecting right now to win and what ranking they will be in the NL Central. I'm predicting right now to finish last, number 5, would be the Pirates. I am predicting number 4 to be the Brewers, then the Cubs in 3rd place, the Cardinals in 2nd, although I will tell you, with Cody Bellinger re-signing with the Cubs, I could see it being 2nd and 3rd, sort of back and forth with the Cubs and Cardinals this year. He's really going to make a difference, Cody Bellinger. Getting back to the team, he put up some monster numbers last year, and I expect the same things moving forward. And the number 1 team I'm projecting in the NL Central are the Cincinnati Reds. Now, let's start with number 5, the number 5 team, and I'll give you sort of a rundown of their key fantasy players, their sleeper players in fantasy, and whether or not their relief pitcher is worth a pickup or a look. And really, with the Pirates, one of their players, and I think I would also consider him a sleeper. So I would say the Pirates, in my mind, are one of the few teams that have 2 really strong sleepers. And the first one being their shortstop, O'Neal Cruz. He has a very small sample size. He was in spring training last year. He had 32 at-bats during the 2023 season. And this spring, his on-base percentage is just phenomenal. He has a .389 on-base percentage, but his average is .214. So he's taken some walks, which is good, which will be good for him. He has 1 home run and 2 RBIs and 1 stolen base. If he has the year that I think he can, he's going to put up some pretty good numbers, and they'll only increase from there. Now, let's see. We have the other sleeper, I would say, for Pittsburgh is Mitch Keller. Now, Mitch Keller is someone that they just recently re-signed. He was 13-9 last year with kind of a high ERA, 14.21. He is a starting pitcher, but his strikeout to inning pitch ratio is 9.73 strikeouts per 9 innings, which means if he actually pitched 9 innings, he would average a little over one strikeout an inning, which is perfect. And someone to look for in fantasy rounds is their relief pitcher, David Bednar. He had an ERA, a great ERA, 2.00. Very good for a relief pitcher. He had 39 saves last year, and you got to remember the Pirates weren't that good, and he still had 39 saves, and his strikeout to 9 innings pitch ratio is 10.69. So very, very respectable. Now, the team that I'm predicting to be in fourth place in the NL Central, the Brewers, their most solid person to pick up right now, in my estimation, is Freddie Peralta, the starting pitcher. He had a great ERA of 3.86 last year. His strikeouts to 9 innings pitched ratio is 11.41, and he was 12-10 in wins and losses last year. So he's the solid pickup. Now, if you're looking for a sleeper in the Brewers for your fantasy, I would say Jackson Chourio. Now, he is a rookie. He's one of those guys that's projected to be a 2020 player. He's not someone I would pick up right now, but he's potentially someone that you could pick up once you see how the season is starting and how he's doing. Plus, you have to see how he's doing in spring training to make sure he makes the team. Now, the Brewers have a great bullpen relief pitcher. They have Devin Williams, who had a phenomenal, outstanding 1.53 ERA. He had 36 saves, a great number. Now, the Brewers were better last year than I project them to be this year, but he still had 36 saves, and his strikeouts per 9 innings pitched was the highest for relievers in the NL Central. So that's sort of the way that I see it right there for the Brewers. And now we go to the third place team that I am projecting, and that would be the Cubs in the NL Central. One of their players outside of Cody Bellinger, we all know he's probably going to put up some really good numbers and everyone's going to draft him. But we're talking about the next level of players, the players that might not have all the name recognition that some of the other players do. So C.I. Suzuki, in my mind, would be a very solid fantasy pickup. He had 20 home runs, 74 RBIs. He batted .285. He had an on-base percentage of .357, which is great, and it's going to that magic number of .360. So that is really good to look at. A sleeper pick, so someone you might want to waste in a later round, or depending upon how big your fantasy drafts are, you could even maybe pick him up early in the season, is Christopher Morel. He had 26 home runs. He only batted .247, but he did have an on-base percentage of .313. Now, remember, he's a DH, which in fantasy doesn't really make that much of a difference outside of the fact you can only plug him into certain positions, the alternative positions, the DH positions, those kinds of things. Since he doesn't play a regular position, you won't be able to plug him in to a lot of places. And they have a pretty decent relief pitcher in Alzolay. He had a 2.67 ERA last year with 22 saves. He did have a strikeout to 9 innings pitched ratio of 9.42. So the Cubs have some solid pickups and much potential in fantasy for the 2024 season. Now let's go for the team that I'm picking second in the NL Central, and that's the St. Louis Cardinals. Now, besides the guys at first and third base, the Arenados of the world and things, and Goldschmidts, I want to draw your attention to one of the pickups the Cardinals made in the offseason. I think he's going to be better than maybe even I think. It's Sonny Gray, the starting pitcher. He was 8-8 last year. He had a very respectable 2.79 ERA, and his strikeouts to 9 innings pitched was just under 9. It was 8.95. So from a fantasy standpoint, he's a solid pickup. A sleeper in this, in my estimation, would be Jordan Walker. Jordan Walker, the right fielder for the Cardinals. Now, he had 16 home runs. He had a very solid on-base percentage with .342, and he batted .267. So very, very solid numbers. Can he get to another level this year? I think is what a lot of people are looking at. Can he, get to 20 home runs? Can he maybe bat closer to 300? Is he going to have a higher on-base percentage? We'll see. But if he does, he's going to be a great pick. So he's one of those people to look at in a later rounds and maybe early in the season monitor how he's doing. That's Jordan Walker of the Cardinals. They have a pretty decent relief pitcher in Ryan Helsley. He had a 2.45 ERA, and his strikeout to 9 innings pitch ratio was 12.76, which is phenomenal. I think it's second in the relievers in the NL Central. So very solid. However, he didn't have the numbers last year of saves. I think he'll get them this year. And now for the assessment of the Reds, the team that I think will win the NL Central, I would say that a sleeper pick for the Reds would be Hunter Green, the starting pitcher. Now, he had a higher ERA of 4.82, but the thing about Hunter Green, his upside is phenomenal. He had a 12.21 strikeout to 9 innings pitched ratio, meaning if starting pitchers actually pitched 9 innings anymore, he would have 12 strikeouts per game, which is a huge number and great for fantasy. Now, their most solid fantasy pickup, I would say, is the Eli De La Cruz, their shortstop. He had 13 home runs. He had 35 stolen bases, and he had a 300 on-base percentage. I think those numbers are all going to go up. He only batted 235, so hopefully in the spring he's working, on hitting a little bit better, get that number up, get those walks up a little bit more, and get that on-base percentage, closer to 320, 340, and then he'll be, a perennial all-star if he could get that higher. Now, in the bullpen, is Alexis Diaz, and he is a fastball slider pitcher. He had an ERA of 3.07. I keep going back in the screen, and I just need to buy a green screen. But he had 37 saves, and nobody's watching, so I'm not going to talk. And we're going to go over the Reds again because nobody's watching at this time. The Reds, Hunter Green, I would say, is a sleeper pick for the Reds in fantasy, their starting pitcher. His ERA last year was 4.82, but his real upside is the fact that he averaged if starting pitchers pitched 9 innings, he averaged 12.21 strikeouts per 9 innings, which is phenomenal for fantasy. It's the kind of thing that can help you with strikeouts on your fantasy team, and hopefully, because they're so good at strikeouts, wins and ERA. Now, the most solid fantasy pickup you could probably make off of the Reds, the team that I think will come in first in the NL Central, is their shortstop, Eli De La Cruz. He had 13 home runs last year, but he did have 35 stolen bases. He only batted 235, but his on-base percentage was 300. So if he can get those numbers up, his batting average, his on-base percentage. The other thing to look for with him is we know he can steal. Can he become a 2020 player? And all eyes are right around there. 15 home runs, 15 to 20 home runs. He had 35 stolen bases last year. So he's going to be very close this year. I think if the lineup can protect him, he will probably get close to 20 home runs. Now, they have a really good arm in the bullpen, the relief pitcher, Alexis Diaz. He had 37 saves last year. His ERA was a very respectable 3.07, and he averaged for innings pitched 11.5 strikeouts per 9 innings pitched, which maybe for a relief pitcher isn't a big deal, but what it says is he's using his fastball, he's using his slider, he's getting guys out, so the whip numbers will go down, his strikeouts will go up. He probably averages when he pitches at least 1 strikeout an inning, so you're going to get those numbers tick 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 more from him, and your strikeout ratio is going to, or your strikeout numbers are going to go high, because he'll probably pitch 3 innings a week, which probably is anywhere from 3 to 4 additional strikeouts. Now, the way I'm projecting the final standings of the NL Central this year in 2024 is, and I'm going to go backwards in order here, would be number 5, the Pirates. Number 4, the Brewers, who lost a big part of their team with Corbin Burns. The Cubs 3rd, although with the Bellinger pickup, I think they could swap places with the Cardinals, 2 and 3, 3 and 2, whatever that might be. And then number 1, I think the Reds are going to take it again in the NL Central. So thank you all for watching. I really appreciate it. And until next time, I'll be coming up with more division predictions over the next few days. Thank you.